Hi there, this is David Weiss, the board game concierge here at 401 Games, and this week's game is Claim 2, the tiny but mighty sequel to, unsurprisingly, Claim, which came out in 2017. Both were designed by Scott Almes, who you might know as the force behind the Gamelin Games Tiny Epic series, which I love. So when I heard that Almes had designed a trick-taking game for 2 players, it was an insta-buy for me. Let's take a look and see if this standalone expansion is also for you. The object in Claim is to win the allegiance of more factions than your opponent by the end of the game. Each of the factions has its own suit. 3 of them, dragons and trolls and seers, each have 10 cards numbered from 0 to 9, while the gnomes have 13 cards with multiples of the same odd number, 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. And the giants have 9 odd numbered cards, 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. Claim is played in 2 phases. In phase 1, players use the cards in their hands to recruit the cards that they will use in phase 2 to win over followers in each of the 5 factions. Each phase consists of 13 tricks. The top card of the rest of the deck is turned over, let's say this one, and that is going to be the prize for the winner. Whoever wins the previous trick plays first. On the very first trick of the game, it's the youngest player. So the first player leads, let's say with 5 of seers, and if the other player has a seer, they must follow suit. Otherwise, they can play any suit. Now, if both players play the same numbered card, which can happen, say, with gnomes or dragons, so if I play 3 of gnomes and my opponent plays the 3 of gnomes, then I win the trick because I played first. Then what happens is both of those cards are discarded. The winner of the trick gets this card face down for the second half of the game, and the other player picks a random card off the top of the deck that goes face down for their second half of the game. This means that in phase 2, each player will again have 13 cards that they won or drew randomly in phase 1. Now you play 13 more tricks, only this time the winner gets to keep both cards, and they go as followers in their score pile. At the end of the game, players flip over their score piles and sort them by faction. Whoever has the most cards in a faction then wins the allegiance of that faction, and whoever wins the most allegiance factions wins the game, with ties going to the player who has the most cards in their allied factions. Now, in and of itself, this is a neat idea, but of course, Almes knows that the best games require 2 or sometimes more neat ideas mashed together to really click. And in the case of Claim, it's the different powers of the factions, because each faction breaks the rules of the game in a different way. If you are the last player to play a dragon, you get to lead for the following trick, regardless of whether you won or not. In phase 1, if you win with a seer, where are those seers? If you win with a seer, then you get to look at the top card of the deck and take that one if you think it's better than the face-up card. That's because sometimes it's just better. Now, gnomes, giants, and trolls, their powers are all triggered in phase 2. Dragons happen in both phases. If you win a gnome in phase 2, instead of going face down into your score pile, it stays face up in front of you. where it can be smashed and eliminated by a player who wins with a giant later in the phase. If it survives to the end of the game, though, it swears allegiance to you. And the trolls have this weird thing that you can only ever win one troll card at a time. So if both players play trolls, the winner gets to keep only the higher numbered one in their score pile. The other one stays on the table and goes to the winner of the next trick. Now, if the next trick also has trolls, let's say after that, one player leads the 8 of trolls and the other player plays the 3 of giants, then that player will win. The 8 of trolls wins. They get the 8 of trolls and the 3 of giants, but the 4 of trolls stays out. And if 2 trolls are played, let's say the 9 and the 6, then the 9 of trolls joins the score pile and the other 2 now stay out. So it's possible for the trolls to pile up so that theoretically the last trick of the game, whoever wins that last trick can also win a bunch of trolls. And that can be very swingy. So there are 2 questions here. 1, does Claim 2 stand on its own? And 2, should you get Claim 2 if you already have Claim? So my answer to 2, I think, is a definite yes. But my answer to 1 is yes, but. If you already own Claim, then you know it really scratches that trick-taking itch for 2 players. And there are very few games out there that do that. And getting the second game just gives you more options, because not only can you swap in factions each time for different playing experiences, but there's also rules where you combine the decks from both games to either play with 3 players, each fending for themselves, or playing with 2 teams of 2. Now, I haven't tried either of those. It's hard enough to find one other person to play with under lockdown conditions, but I have enough faith in Scott Almes as a designer and in the basic Claim system to have confidence that it works. Maybe not as tightly as just the 2-player experience, but still. As to whether Claim 2 stands on its own merits, I think it does, but I think the base game is an easier introduction because the factions are easier to wrap your head around. They're a little more intuitive, but that's just my opinion. Either way, for the price, both of these are great light fillers that makes for great gifts, or if you're watching this later in the year, stocking stuffers for a friend or loved one, or both, who loves trick-taking games. So, click on the link below to order your copy of Claim 2. This is David Weiss, your concierge at 41games.ca. Thanks for watching. See you next week.